So everybody, this is Joe. Joe and I went to JetBlue training at JetBlue University. We graduated, I think it was
May, like
May, May-ish, 25th. Let's just say May 25th.
May 25th.
Yeah, class of 618. So Joe and I both kind of bonded. We're both into fitness, um, and we just really hit it off there. And basically, I have Joe on here because I want Joe to give you all some tips on selecting crash pads. And because Joe has lived that crash pad life, I thankfully haven't, but I have lived vicariously through his stories. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful I don't live in a crash pad. But first off, Joe, just want to introduce yourself. Tell everybody what's going on, what you're doing, anything you're working on the side as well. Feel free.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for that introduction.
Of course.
Like you said, pretty much we went to JetBlue University together, and despite me being in the AM class and him being in the PM class, we pretty much just would bump shoulders every so often, and we pretty much just hit it off talking about fitness and travel and doing things outside the job and just pretty much getting the most out of life and the job in general, just because don't want to put yourself in one corner, especially when there's so many things that you could do. You just got to think outside the box to do them.
Exactly.
And pretty much through that mentality, that leads me to what I want to be doing as well, aside from flying. And that's to start working into fitness as well as a motivational and wellness thing where I can try to basically use my mindset that I've gotten through my experiences and help others to reach that potential. Because the thing is, people have those aspirations, but they don't have that sparking force that helps them go. And for me, I was lucky enough to have, I've had coaches and friends and mentors, and it's those things that through those three experiences or people, they kind of got me on the right path of, okay, you can let your own spark now, but it helps you more if you can help reach out to others. And pretty much that's my plan.
Yeah, you should make a good point. Just because I use a mentor, I would still want to use a mentor down the road. Just because you use a mentor doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. The most successful people use mentors, and that's because you're, in a sense, you realize that you're not at your true potential, and that somebody else is at their true potential, and that you can see that you could benefit from them. So by recognizing that, it's going to set you apart from everybody else, and it's going to push you forward to reach your goals. So
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
yeah,
Well, yeah, because right now the whole thing is you always want to be learning from someone, or in my case, I just always want to be learning, whether
yeah,
that be a little simple skill I learn online or just reading a history book or just books that are good for your development in general. And right now, just trying to get myself situated before I start picking up with a mentor again, just because I want to
it's
hit my
costly.
first roadblock in my first failure, because right now I don't want to have, not saying that they're a crutch by any means, but I'm the kind of personality where I want to go until I know that I need that swift kick in the ass or the guiding hand. Because if I lean too much on them, then I lose that motivation. I can do it myself. So it's a nice balancing act of, okay, I'll reach out every so often when I need to, but when I really need to, it's okay, I'm ready to hear my instructions.
Right there with you, man. So let's just get into this now.
All right, game time. Let's go.
Good time, man. So tips on selecting crash pads. Basically, how did you go about the process of finding your crash pad? You've lived in more than one crash pad as well. And what did you go through, or who did you go through to find these crash pads?
Well, starting off, when I first got to Boston, my first base, pretty much it was one of those kind of last minute deals where I was in either crash pad, got to base, and unfortunately, they don't exactly give you the most help right out of training, just because it's kind of, they just get you ready to do the job. Then the rest is pretty much up to you, because you're an adult and you got to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So when I got to base, I pretty much went to the crew leads and asked around, just be like, hey, I'm new to the area, new to the job and everything else, never lived in a crash pad, don't know exactly what I'm looking for. And they were nice enough to direct me to the wall that basically had all the numbers. And pretty much my way of picking was saw the first name on the list, put it in my phone, called him. I was like, hey, do you have room in your crash pad? The guy said, yeah. Paid my deposit and went right in. As for the other one, when I changed bases to JFK, that was just through reaching out to other, our classmates that live there. And they're like, oh, hey, I have a room if you're interested. I know you're coming to this base and you need one. And it's also nicer because both times I had people that we went to class with starting out in that crash pad. Like eventually they moved out. But it's like, it's nice to have a spot where, you have some, at least one or two familiar faces, and it's not just, ooh, excuse me, clean
Bunch of
slate.
random people.
Yeah.
I hear you. All right. That's good. Good input right there. So let's go into. I want to skip to number 3, and then I'll go back to number 2. But number 3 is
Okay.
basically explain what a crash pad is, because I never even knew what a crash pad was until I talked to you.
Oh, yeah, me either.
Yeah.
So let me put it to you this way. It is an apartment that's broken up by having multiple people into a lot of rooms. Like, for example, the one in Boston had 12 people in total, 4 people to a room, 3 rooms, 1 kitchen, 1 fridge, 1 bathroom. And of course, that sounds very undesirable, but it pretty much, you're there to sleep, you're there to go to work, and that's pretty much it. And it's rare that you have all the people in the room or in the crash pad at the same time, because like you who are there to work, your schedule's like, all right, hey, some people are called at like 3, some people are called whenever, and they're out on trips, and they could be gone for days, or they could be just going home on vacation just for fun. So it's basically a giant dorm with people that do the same job or that are in the same industry, because there's sometimes AOs there, or pilots, or anyone that really needs a spot for work.
You said other airlines also can live in the
Oh, of
crash pad as
course,
well.
of course.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the perks of being in one, because you get to meet people from other industries.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of reminds me of like how I went through college. Like, so my first year of college, I didn't have to live in a dorm, but I kind of wish I did live in a dorm, because I felt like I
Oh,
would have met a lot more people, and I would have had more friends. But I still had a lot of friends because I joined a fraternity. But I feel like I would
mm,
have had like different friends if I stayed in a dorm. So it's kind of like similar to graduating like flight attendant training, like staying in a crash pad is kind of like you're right to live in a dorm like your first year, and then you get to move on to like an apartment, and then maybe a
ah,
house, you know. So it's a great way to meet a bunch of people, because you said you have friends that you live with as well. So,
yeah.
and you're looking into apartments at some point.
Oh, of course. Well, it's the same thing. I never lived in in a dorm before. I went from apartment to frat house to other frat house to apartment. So
Yeah.
it was kind of a culture shock for me. But it's not. You just have to get used to the lifestyle. That's pretty much it. It seems intimidating because everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to pull all my stuff." You have to realize that you're barely there, and when you're there for a couple days, you make the most of it. So
Yeah. So it's not too bad. It's not like you're stuck there the whole month. And that's kind of
yeah,
like
no.
what the idea of a crash pad is. People kind of commute to their crash pad from their home state or their hometown. So basically, let's go into back to question number 2. You started off in Boston, but you ended up transferring to JFK. Basically, talk about why you selected Boston first, and then how you transferred to JFK. And was it a hard transition, or was it just like a phone call?
Well, for me, starting off in Boston, just because being fresh, new to the job and industry and all that good stuff, and considering that we only have 5 bases, um, I didn't want to be home in New York, because I mean I've lived there for years, almost my entire life. I've been there, done that. Wanted to try something new, especially because I get to fly, so I can always fly home if I needed to. So that wasn't a big deal. Orlando, I just moved out of Orlando, and plus out of base seniority, I thought that was not a good spot for me. Not that it's a good place to be. It's just, if you want to get seniority, we both know that that's not exactly the place you want to jump right into.
No, definitely not.
Same thing with Lauderdale, and same thing with California. Like, so it just made sense by process of elimination for career and to try a new spot entirely. Boston was the one. plus it's also not too far from home in case I had to go. So
And
back.
I don't know if you heard, but we're
Oh
supposed
yeah,
to
no, believe me, I've heard your seniority went up because you guys got like what, 3 new classes now?
3 new classes. We're getting 10,000 extra hours next month, and
Yep.
I think I'm 54th in line to get a line, which is insane. I thought I
Yeah,
was like, "Eh." So
must be nice.
I might get one next month. Let's not like get too crazy, but hey, man,
Yeah,
time to leave. Jump the gun, but
yeah, dude. Oh, going back to answering your question because I slightly salty that year, but I left while all the lines are coming in because I knew it was gonna happen too. But going back to the reason why I left Boston was I was there for 9 months or the 10 months. I honestly the days kind of blend together, so I think we've been there for 9 months, but
time flies with this job.
yeah.
Like, every time I turn around, it's the next month. I'm like, oh, I got a bid for my next schedule. Like,
Oh, absolutely. That's not speaking of which, I actually have to do
mm,
that. But with Boston, it was nice for 9 months. I got to explore the city. It was exciting, and I really did actually like it because I was looking for apartments there. And it got to the point where I'm like, all right, I can see myself settling down here. It's pretty cool. Like, it's not going to be home by any means, but it's a nice place to be. And then I got the news that I'm going to be a double uncle, where my sister and her husband are going to have a child, and my best friend and his wife are going to have a child, roughly a week apart.
oh,
So, well, yeah, no, it's crazy. And I thought, you know, I can transfer bases and I can help out when I can because I mean, they both have lots of stress. Having a kid themselves and getting
yeah,
everything ready, and obviously, the works. And I was like, like, hey, like I want to be around because obviously I want to help out when I can, and be supportive, obviously. Plus, being home for a little bit won't be too bad, especially because I'll be flying around. So I'll be home, but I'll be also flying to every which way. So I thought it's the best situation for now, and then eventually change locations again. So,
that's true.
fun stuff.
You're closer to some friends you made as well, so it only
Oh
makes.
yeah, true.
And then you can have like a chance to find an apartment as well. So
Yeah,
also the family, and it's not like it's permanent either. Like you said, you can literally
yeah.
fly. Like we're gone 18 days, 18 plus days a month. So true, true. All right, let's get into question number
Ooh,
4. So,
well, wait.
what should
Before
some?
you
Oh, sorry.
before you finish at number 4, going back to number 1 because I realized I didn't really exactly give you a definitive answer. So my bad, guys. So aside from talking to your crew lead, there's Facebook groups as well. There are also what's it? Uh, there's usually a list or I don't want to say registry, but a list of names or crash pad owners. Also word of mouth too, because almost everyone in the industry has been in the crash pad at some point, so they can be like, oh hey, I know one, because even though they're super senior, they might have one that they don't stay in just because sometimes if they get back from a trip late and they miss their flight to go home, they stay at a crash pad because it's cheaper. So basically, you have other options aside from me just going to a crew lead. But that is one of your options besides a list or a Facebook group or anyone that's also in the industry because everybody talks, everybody uses them. It's not as hard to find them. I just happen to be kind of,
Late in the
not
game.
not picky.
Yeah, that and yeah. So basically, meet people at training, socialize, talk to the trainers, the instructors themselves, and they'll definitely help you get set up if that's something that like you're really stressing about. So,
Yeah,
all right, thanks for that. Thanks for going back to that one.
no problem, man.
Number, number 4 is what should someone expect living in a crash pad? So like bedroom situations, maybe food situations, cleaning situations. I don't know. I'm not sure.
That is an
Right.
excellent question. So the two that I've been in are two entirely different ones. Obviously, each one of them is different. They have their own quirks and stuff, but there's generally a pattern that follows at least the two that I've been in. One of them was broken up by 4 bedrooms to a room, which bunk beds, so you get to feel like a kid again, even though you're an adult. And
Some
always try to go for the bottom bunk. Bottom bunk is best bunk. I don't
100%.
care what anyone says.
I agree.
Bottom bunk is
Roll
key.
in.
The one I'm currently in now is excuse me, is a 6 to a room, which is just another bunk bed, but the rooms are also bigger. You're not entirely cramped. Um, Basically, depending on the layouts, there's usually one and or two refrigerators or one and or two bathrooms. It is pretty much kitchen, common area slash. Uh, I guess it's like a living room. I guess what you'd call it, common room, living room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something
yeah. And
combination.
then like it's pretty much like 3 rooms. Some of them are cool and they would have like laundry in the basement. Not all of them have that. Some of them you have to go to laundromat or I go home and do my laundry. So, whatever works.
Yes, yeah.
Hey man, it worked in college. It works now.
Dude, I'm so glad I didn't have that experience in college either. I've just been lucking out. Um,
Glad. What I was gonna say. Oh, but yeah, pretty much. As for cleaning, because I just realized I forgot you said that as well. For cleaning, for us at the one in Boston, once a month a cleaner would come and pretty much like you obviously clean after yourselves, but once a month a cleaner would come and like vacuum dust and all that good stuff, and then they drop off like uh what's it like toiletries and stuff, and just be like, all right, there you go, good till next month, and then they leave. The one that's in I'm currently in now, this person comes like I think once or twice a week and like takes all the trash and stuff and like takes it out for you and then cleans one day, which is pretty cool because I mean,
awesome.
yeah, I mean obviously like it's never that bad where it requires someone to do it, but still they do it anyway just because they want to make sure it's clean. So
Yeah, I feel like once a month is just that's too little. 'Cause,
really,
yeah, I feel
I
like
mean,
if somebody came in and cleaned the place, cleaned my. If I like just let everything just chill, the
but
trash chill, the dish. Did they
oh,
want?
but like everybody, oh, I mean, when it comes to trash, I mean, depending on what spot you're in, the one that was in Boston, like we would always take it out ourselves, just
Oh,
because,
okay.
yeah, like that wasn't part of like the cleaning person's job. They came in, just touched up things, and that was it. The one that's here now, there's no dumpster or anything like right outside, so that's the difference. Like it's all location based. Like in Boston, there was a dumpster like literally at the bottom of like the stairs, where you can just toss it in there from the stairs and be done with it. I don't even know where like a rubbish bin is for like the New York one. It's just the guy comes, takes it away, and then it's gone out of my life. So I have no idea where it
Mystery
is.
bin. I don't know where it is, but hey,
Yeah, not my
it's
problem.
empty.
I wash my hands of it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm. That's what to expect if you are planning on living in a crash pad. Um, talk about some experiences you had in a crash
All
pad.
right, this is the
Some
fun one.
good, some bad.
Well, let's start with some of the bad. Going with food and stuff. It's each one is different. The key to all of them is if you're new there and there's people that are there who have been there for a while, there's usually a system that's established like, hey, I get that cabinet, that person has that cabinet, this one's open, or some people just don't care and they just toss their stuff wherever and they just write their names on it. That's a very dangerous one. I don't like that stuff. Um, because that
Those are the
leads
people
into
that are like,
my,
yeah, we'll just put it wherever you want. And that person that says that is usually the one that is stealing from everybody.
oh, absolutely, hands
So,
down.
like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
we're
But
we're all here.
going to the experiences, some of the not stellar experiences are people throwing out my food, which I'm still salty about.
Fresh food.
Um, Dude, stuff I just bought, tossed it out. Just god damn, that was terrible. People tossing out food, snoring, and just not being so considerate. Like, and I mean, then again, this might be nitpicky because I mean, I'm a fairly like I tidy up after myself. Like I do my dishes after I use them and all that good stuff. But like, sometimes like there's like beard trimmings on like the counter and you're like, come on.
Nah, yeah,
Like,
that's common sense. You just clean up. Like it's just
I mean, I get that if you're in a rush, you're like, oh, like it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm half asleep. Like that's cool and all, but if it becomes a habit, you're kind of like, do you know how to take care of yourself? Because it's kind of concerning. But those are very minuscule ones. There's never anything that's too terrible just because it's usually you're in your either in your own zone or you're on call or at work or you know what I mean, like flying somewhere or if you're home, then you're either out of the crash pad doing something fun in the city, or I don't know, taking a nap, reading a book, or whatever else you want to do. It's whatever. The fun ones are when you have people that when you meet new people from either different companies or different areas in the business or the industry as a whole, and you get to hang out with them. Because I met some cool people from American, from Delta, and it's been cool because like obviously we both talk about like the jobs and stuff, but then you're like, oh cool, let's go explore the city. Like, have you been to this place, or have you gone to see this yet? And it's kind of cool because like you're kind of forced to meet new people, and if you're there for a while, it's kind of neat that you get to experience that with other people, because sometimes they're new, just as new as you are, and excuse me again, they're just as new as you are, and you're like, all right, this is cool, and then you get to explore and like learn cool stuff about like wherever you're at, which is kind of a cool thing to be in.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. That thing comes down to connections as well. So you're making more connections than just the connections you have at our airline. So that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. All right. So number 5. I think at this point I'll probably cut the video off, and then this will be part 2.
Part
Since
two. All right.
yeah, 5 to 9, 9ish really isn't a question. You kind of answered it in the beginning, but question number 5 is kind of answered this one too, but some pros and cons of a crash pad. Like basically, maybe compare the cost of living in a crash pad to an apartment. Um, Kind of covered some of this, but we didn't really talk about the cost yet. So I guess just briefly cover um, pros and cons of like cost versus
All right.
apartment crash pads.
Well, I mean, I'll just do a quick rundown, but starting off with cost, pretty much it's roughly $300 depending on which crash pad you're in. I mean, one of them I paid was $290, and the other one's $300. So, I mean, $10 difference. But they're roughly significantly more inexpensive than finding a an apartment, especially one that's for however many months. Because one of the cool pros of starting with a crash pad is most of them are month to month, or you pay for 2 months at a time. Which, I mean, not it's not like it's a lease, but you stay there for 2 months, and then if you want, you can go. You can either go to another crash pad, another wherever you want to go. You're not locked into it, as opposed for an apartment, you're signing a lease for 6 months or a year, and then you're pretty much locked in. And if something happens, you're like, wow, I can't stay here. You're kind of out of luck. Aside from that, though, another pro about being in a crash pad is if you are uncertain about a base or anything at all, it's much easier to pick up and go. Like, for example, it's like, all right, cool, I transfer next month and I don't have to pay for next month's crash pad. It's more fluid as opposed to, okay, now I need to make sure I can get out, like going back to leases and stuff. It's just a lot more, you're more mobile, because if you're in an apartment, you obviously have more stuff. Where in a
Not
crash pad,
locked
you
in.
have like 2 suitcases or like 3. You know what I mean? It's easier to be out the door when the day comes, as opposed to needing multiple days to pack all your stuff up and like, all right, now I need to either find a moving truck or coordinate with people to move my stuff. Um, I think number 3 of awesome things about a crash pad is that if you're in a brand new city like I was, it's a great inexpensive way to explore the place around you, because I've been to Boston like once when I was visiting family years ago, and I remember like the Green Line or something. It wasn't like whatever, but because I was there in a crash pad, it was a cheaper way for me to explore the areas and find a spot where I actually wanted to move to, as opposed to just shooting blind and being like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go to Booster or something. Like, it's kind of just, you get to get a little taste of it first and know where you want to go, especially if you've never been there. And in the case of New York, like, been in New York my whole life, I know that the prices suck, and it's nice that I get to be in the city for cheap, despite it being a crash pad. It's still kind of nice where I'm like, all right, cool, like nobody else in the city is going to be paying this much for a place to live, like a roof
Yeah.
over your head and a kitchen. So like, that's the cool things. Going to the negative side of it is pretty much you don't exactly have your own space, which it comes with the territory, but also it can be kind of exhausting where you just get back from a trip and you just want to sleep. That's really cool and all, but sometimes you get people that are exactly the ideal roommates. Luckily for me, I've not run into this yet, but we've all heard those horror stories of someone had a roommate that did this or that, and you get home from like a 4-day trip and you just want to sleep. You get like two people in your room that are just being loud as hell or inconsiderate, or hey, you got to go to airport standby at, I don't know, 5:30 in the morning. Some dude at 3 o'clock turns on the light because, oh, didn't know anyone else was in here, and it wakes you up and you're kind of zonked. So it's kind of little stuff like that, but also space is a huge one just because I know some people travel heavy. I travel light and eventually accumulate stuff when I feel more comfortable with it. And it kind of is annoying when I like to meal prep and prepare my stuff and just cook. Kind of hard to do that when either 12 people or 16 people are sharing one fridge and one kitchen. So it's hard to balance all that just because there's not enough space to store food. There's not enough space to have stuff in the fridge, and especially for multiple days. And people move. Like, it's it's hard to manage with that. It honestly just depends on who you live with and how the people are. But at the same time, you have to understand that it's a clusterfuck. It's, to put it mildly. I'm not sure if that's cool to say on this, but it
Cool.
is.
Let her ride. Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, no, it's a spacing issue. But considering that it's a short-term thing, it does have its pros. But at the same time, you get what you pay for at the same time.
Yeah, makes sense. So what
Yep.
do you what would you say the retention rates are of somebody living at a specific crash pad? Like, is it like people are just like bouncing a crash pad to crash pad, or is it like
Um, it depends because some people I've come to know some people that move from crash pad to crash pad because they want to find one that works best for them. Some people like myself are kind of like, I mean, I just want four walls and a roof. Like I don't, I'm not that picky.
walls, a room? Yeah.
And for that, it's just all right. I stayed in the same one in Boston for 9 months. Like I'm sure people were telling me to go to other ones because they're like, oh, this one's closer to this, or this one's better, or it's. And I was like, this one suits me fine. Like it's close to the train station, it's close to like a grocery place, and it's close to the gym. Like I'm sure it's a while to get into the city, but it's whatever. It does the job for now. It's not a long term thing. It's just to get the gears going. um, I mean, the thing is, it depends on because if you go into one and you're very upset with it, just wait out the month and then go to another one. That's the cool thing about the fluidity of it because some people hop around until they either find one that they really like or they just hop around until they're like, all right, cool, I want an apartment. So it's I don't know, I like having the idea of fluidity where I can be like, all right, this isn't working, and just drop and go. It's makes it a lot more like that you're in control as opposed to having a lease over your head where you're kind of like, yikes, can't get out of this one.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand where you're coming from. That would be perfect and ideal, especially for with that we don't really get that great of pay right now. So it's you can't really look for luxury items or luxury
Yeah.
places at this point. So once we get a line and we get more hours and we get more money, then you can kind of think about
Mhm.
the apartment or maybe a house. Who knows?